The air in the diplomatic suite tasted of ozone and recycled patience. It was a taste Colonel Elara Vance knew well. Stationed on the forgotten moon of Ganymede, the suite was a deliberate choice by Earth's command, a projection of humility, of a species that knew its place on the cosmic ladder. The walls were scuffed durasteel, the single viewport showed Jupiter's swirling, indifferent eye, and the sun was a distant, powerless star. Elara stirred her cup of herbal tea, the quiet scrape of the spoon against ceramic the only sound she permitted herself to make. It was a small, human ritual, a point of solid ground in a conversation built on chasms. Across the metallic table, High Arbiter Caelthus of the Covenant was a study in condescending grace. He was a tall, willowy being whose skin emitted a soft, pearlescent light that seemed to push back the station's dim lighting. He hadn't touched the water offered to him. His posture was one of profound stillness, the kind a predator holds before it strikes. "We have watched your species for a considerable time, Colonel," Caelthas began, his voice a smooth, melodic baritone that a lesser opponent might have found soothing. "We have charted your rapid, chaotic expansion, your wars, your brief, brilliant bursts of innovation, your remarkable capacity for both self-destruction and survival." Elara met his gaze. His eyes were solid silver orbs, and in their depths she saw no malice. She saw something far more dangerous. Certainty. "The Covenant does not come as a conqueror," he continued, steepling his long, three-fingered hands. "We come as shepherds. Your developmental trajectory is a chaotic variable in a galaxy that requires order. The Kuiper Belt incident, where one of our patrol fleets vanished without a trace, is but the most recent symptom of this chaos." He leaned forward slightly, the light from his skin intensifying, casting long shadows in the small room. "For this reason, the Council has issued the Edict of Salvation. Your species will be brought under the Covenant's guidance. Your technological and social development will be curated to ensure you evolve into a stable, productive member of the galactic community. We will save you from yourselves." Elara took a slow, deliberate sip of her tea. The warmth was a welcome anchor. She had faced down warlords in the Jovian moons and stared into the cold vacuum of corporate assassins. The Arbiter's righteous certainty was just another kind of weapon, and she knew exactly how to disarm it. She placed the cup back on the saucer. The click of ceramic on ceramic was sharp, definitive, and loud in the tense silence. "Your salvation comes at too high a price, High Arbiter," she said, her voice even and cold as the ice outside. She paused, letting the words hang in the air. "It sounds a great deal like servitude." For the first time, a flicker of something disturbed the Arbiter's serene facade. The light from his skin dimmed infinitesimally. His silver eyes narrowed. Elara delivered the final blow. "We will tend to our own souls, thank you." Caelthus did not reply immediately. He simply rose from his chair, his tall frame seeming to fill the entire room. The air grew cold. The faint hum of the station's life support suddenly felt like a countdown. "The edict is not a negotiation, Colonel," he said, his melodic voice now stripped of all warmth. "It is a mercy that has just expired." He turned and swept from the room, leaving Elara Vance alone with her cold tea and the absolute certainty of the war to come. Aboard the Covenant dreadnought Righteous Fury, the bridge was a cathedral of light and order. Polished chrome walkways connected holographic tactical displays that shimmered in the air like captured nebulae. Here, war was a clean, mathematical exercise. Admiral Zelar stood at the command dais, his own skin glowing with a faint, zealous light that mirrored his High Arbiter's. He was a veteran of 100 campaigns, a being forged in the certainty of the Covenant's divine mandate. He looked upon the tactical display showing the 32 primitive human vessels arranging themselves near Jupiter's massive gravity well, and felt a surge of righteous pity. "Primitive fusion drives," he muttered to his second-in-command, a hint of disdain in his voice. "They huddle near their gas giant like children hiding behind their mother's robes. A shame we must be so severe." He straightened, his voice booming across the bridge. "All vessels, target their lead ships. A show of overwhelming force to break their spirit. Fire at will." 1,000 plasma cannons charged with a harmonious hum. A wave of brilliant white-hot energy lanced across the void. It was a beautiful, terrible sight. And it was the last moment of certainty aboard the Righteous Fury. "Sir," the tactical officer reported, his smooth voice suddenly tight. "Multiple missile impacts confirmed, but trajectories were unstable. Several units deviated without cause." Xylar waved a dismissive hand. "The Jovian magnetosphere. A predictable complication. Continue the assault." Another volley. This time the officer's voice was strained. "Sir, the human vessels, they are not evading. Their energy signatures are fluctuating." On the main view screen, the image magnified. A human cruiser, designated Phoenix, was targeted by a dozen plasma bolts. But just as the bolts were about to impact, the ship stuttered. For a fraction of a second, its image became a translucent ghost. Then it solidified again. 500 kilometers to port, completely unscathed. "Report!" Elara roared, his composure cracking for the first time. I I cannot explain it, Admiral," the officer stammered. "They aren't moving. They are simply elsewhere, all of them. They're bypassing causality." The bridge, once a symphony of calm efficiency, was now a cacophony of alarms and confused shouts. The neat, orderly battle had devolved into a nightmare. Human ships blinked in and out of existence, appearing behind Covenant formations, their crude kinetic weapons tearing through the unshielded rear armor of ships that were never designed to be flanked. "Focus fire on the lead ship, the one they call Phoenix," Xylar commanded, his voice raw with fury. "I don't care what it takes. Erase that vessel." A single Covenant battlecruiser, the unshakable Vow, locked onto the Phoenix. Its primary cannon, a weapon capable of cracking a small moon, began to charge. But the Phoenix did not fire back. It simply waited. Then a ripple, colorless and almost invisible, expanded from its bow. It wasn't a laser. It wasn't a missile shown. It was a wave of pure wrongness. The wave washed over the unshakable Vow. On the view screen of the Righteous Fury, the crew watched in horror. The brilliant white hull of their sister ship did not explode. It began to tarnish, turning a sickly, mottled brown. "What is that?" Xylar whispered. A panicked voice screamed over the comms, the captain of the Vow. "Hull integrity failing. We have rust on all decks. Power systems are ding." The process accelerated with obscene speed. The proud armor plating, forged to withstand supernovas, peeled away like ancient parchment. Lights winked out across its kilometer-long frame. Antennae drooped and crumbled into fine dust. It was as if 1,000 years of decay were compressed into 10 seconds. The unshakable Vow, a monument of Covenant engineering, died a silent, rotting death before their eyes, finally imploding into a cloud of metallic dust and frozen, escaping atmosphere. Silence. Absolute, profound silence fell upon the bridge of the Righteous Fury. Officers stared at their consoles, their faces pale. The tactical display showed a graveyard where a fleet had been moments before. Admiral Xylar stood frozen, his silver eyes wide with a terror that went beyond the fear of defeat. It was the terror of a zealot witnessing a miracle performed by the devil. He finally spoke, his voice a choked, broken whisper that barely carried across the bridge. "What are they?" Victory was silent. On the bridge of the UES Phoenix, the frantic energy of battle had been replaced by the quiet, methodical hum of damage control. Alerts blinked on tactical displays, reporting depleted munitions, strained power cores, and a casualty list that was mercifully short, but still too long. Colonel Elara Vance stood before the main view screen, which showed the glittering debris field that had once been the Covenant's proudest fleet. There was no triumph in her posture, only the immense weight of command. "Colonel," her communications officer interrupted the quiet, "we are receiving a Priority 1 encrypted signal. It's from the High Arbiter's vessel." A murmur went through the bridge crew. Her tactical officer stepped forward. "Ma'am, it has to be a trick, a virus, a last-ditch attack." Elara stared at the lone Covenant command ship that remained, holding its position just outside their weapons range. It hadn't fled. It had simply watched the slaughter. "No," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "This isn't an attack. This is something else." She turned. "Patch it through to my ready room. Encrypted, audio-visual only. No data exchange." A moment later, she was alone in the Spartan confines of her personal office. The steel wall shimmered and resolved into the image of High Arbiter Kael'thas. The change in him was startling. The divine, righteous glow of his skin had faded to a dull, weary luminescence. The certainty in his silver eyes was gone, replaced by a sorrow so profound it seemed to transcend species. He looked ancient and defeated. "I did not call to offer surrender, Colonel," Kael'thas said, his voice a ghost of its former melodic strength. "I called to offer an explanation." Elara remained silent, her face a mask of cold neutrality. "You believe you have just fought a war of conquest," he continued. "You believe you have defeated an arrogant empire that underestimated you. You are wrong. You have just won the opening battle of a war against existence itself, and in doing so, you may have doomed us all." "Save your prophecies for your priests, Arbiter," Elara cut in, her voice sharp. "I will not listen to excuses for genocide." "It was never prophecy." The words burst from Kael'thas, a flash of passion in the sea of his grief. "It was data, 1,000 futures, simulated and confirmed, all of them ending in the same final all-consuming silence." He lowered his head for a moment. "I am sending you a data packet. It is read only. Your systems will confirm it holds no malicious code. It is merely a visual record, a chronicle of the future you have just ensured." Hesitantly, Elara nodded to the small receiver on her desk. "Accept it." The air in the center of the room shimmered. A holographic image of the Milky Way galaxy bloomed into existence, a beautiful, swirling vortex of light. "This is our galaxy, as it is today," Kael'thas narrated, his voice now a hollow whisper. "Now this is the data from the Oracle, a precognitive device left by a civilization long dead. Watch." A tiny ripple, almost invisible, emanated from the Orion Arm, from the precise location of Earth's solar system. It was not an explosion. It was a subtle disturbance, a flicker in the fabric of reality. And from that flicker, a stain of absolute black began to spread. It was not an object. It was an absence. A wound of nothingness that grew, extinguishing the light of stars as it touched them. It moved slowly at first, then accelerated, a spreading contagion of dark that consumed everything in its path. "We call it the silent hunger," Kael'thas said. "It is a fundamental law of another reality, bleeding into ours. And your species, for reasons we do not comprehend, is the catalyst. Your unique manipulation of space-time, the very thing that won you this battle, is the key that unlocks its cage." The simulation reset and ran again. A different set of human actions, a different timeline, but the same result. The dark stain appeared and consumed the galaxy. Again and again, 1,000 timelines, 1,000 paths to the same universal night. Elara stared, her military composure crumbling away, replaced by a cold dread that seeped into her bones. Every instinct, every fiber of her being screamed that this was real. "We were not trying to conquer you, Colonel Vance," Kael'thas said, his silver eyes locking onto hers through the screen. "We were trying to cauterize a wound before it became septic. We were trying to perform a terrible, necessary surgery on the universe. We have failed." His image flickered. "Now the burden of this knowledge is yours." The transmission ended. Elara Vance stood alone in her ready room, the silence heavier than any planet, colder than any void. She stared at the horrifying, repeating hologram of a dying galaxy. She had just saved her people, only to be shown that she might have just damned everyone else. The holographic briefing room was a sterile grid of light, connecting the bridge of the Phoenix to Earth High Command. The faces of the Unified Council, a dozen of the sharpest military and civilian minds humanity had to offer, floated like ghostly masks in the air. Their expressions ranged from stern disbelief to outright anger. Elara Vance stood alone in the center of the grid, her face impassive as she finished her report. She had replayed the recording of Kael'thas, shown them the horrifying simulation of the spreading darkness. Now she faced their judgment. "It is a trick," declared General Marcus Thorne, his face a mask of iron-gray skepticism, "a sophisticated psychological weapon. They lost the battle, so now they try to win the war by seeding our command with fear and paranoia." "With respect, General," Elara countered, her voice steady, What we witnessed in battle was not conventional. Their fleet's destruction was not conventional. The energy signatures our ships produced, they align with the very space-time disturbances Kael'thas claims are the catalyst. The data is consistent with the evidence. The evidence shows they are liars and murderers, another council member shot back. We cannot entertain a single word from them. Our victory means nothing if the galaxy dies around us, Elara stated, her words cutting through the arguments. To ignore a plausible existential threat, no matter the source, is not strength. It is hubris, the same hubris that led the Covenant to our doorstep. I will not make their mistake. A heavy silence fell over the virtual room. They knew she was right. Her logic was unassailable. What do you propose, Colonel? Asked the council chairwoman, her voice cautious. A joint investigation, Elara said without hesitation. We verify their claims. We travel to the Kuiper Belt. We find the evidence for ourselves. We cooperate, but we do not trust. We keep our weapons aimed, but we open a channel for dialogue. The debate raged for another hour, but Elara's position held. It was the only sane path forward. The next meeting was even more tense. The grid expanded to include a third participant, the Bridge of the Righteous Fury. High Arbiter Kael'thas appeared, his image flickering slightly from the distance. He stood before the wreckage of his own command center, a humbling backdrop. General Thorne spoke first, his voice dripping with hostility. Arbiter, your request for cooperation is audacious, considering you just attempted to annihilate us. My actions were born from a terrible knowledge, General, Kael'thas replied, his tone devoid of pride. A knowledge I now offer to you, not as a conqueror, but as a fellow inhabitant of a galaxy on the brink. We must confirm the nature of the threat at the Kuiper Belt, together. And what is to stop you from leading us into a trap? Thorne pressed. It was Elara who answered, stepping forward to become the bridge between two irreconcilable powers. I will lead the human contingent, she declared. Our fleets will travel parallel, maintaining weapons lock. All data will be shared in real time through a jointly controlled, neutral server. There will be no boarding of ships, no sharing of core technology. This is an alliance of necessity, not of friendship. Those are our terms. Kael'thas looked at Elara, a flicker of something respect, perhaps in his silver eyes. He gave a slow, formal nod. The Covenant accepts these terms. The council chairwoman, after a tense moment, also nodded. Humanity accepts. The new alliance was forged not with a handshake, but with the cold, bitter understanding of mutual annihilation. After the Covenant channel closed, General Thorne's image remained, his eyes fixed on Elara. You are making a grave mistake, Colonel, he warned, his voice low. You're inviting the Viper into our home. Elara didn't flinch. Her gaze was as hard as diamond. The Viper is already in the house, General, she replied. I'm just trying to find out if its fangs are pointed at us or at the monster under the bed. The edge of the solar system was a place of absolute cold and profound silence. Here, stars were sharp, unforgiving pinpricks of light in an infinite blackness. Two fleets, once mortal enemies, now drifted in a tense parallel formation, the sleek, functional warships of humanity and the grand cathedral-like vessels of the Covenant. They were a fragile armada united by a shared, unbelievable terror. Aboard the human science vessel Curiosity, Dr. Eris Thorne sealed the final plate of his EVA suit. He was a xenophysicist, a man who believed the universe was a complex but ultimately knowable equation. His father, General Marcus Thorne, believed this entire mission was a fool's errand. Find me hard data, son, his father had said before they left. Proof of a trick or proof of a threat. Anything else is just noise. Now Eris was about to step into the heart of that noise. His objective was the derelict Covenant patrol ship, the Pious Warden. It floated dead ahead, a ghost ship in the void. Approaching the hull, Command, Eris reported, his voice steady over the comms. His small shuttle docked with the patrol ship's airlock. There's no external damage, no signs of a battle at all. It looks pristine. The outer airlock door hissed open. A wave of unnatural cold washed over them as they cycled through. When the inner door opened, they were greeted not by destruction, but by perfect, eerie order. The corridor was dark, lit only by the beams of their shoulder-mounted lamps. Emergency power was active, but that was all. There were no claxons, no scorch marks, no bodies. The silence, one of the accompanying Marines whispered. It's too quiet. They moved deeper into the ship, a joint team of human scientists and a single silent Covenant observer. They passed the crew quarters, their lights revealing beds made with military precision. They found the mess hall, where trays of petrified food sat on tables as if the crew had simply vanished mid-meal. Life support is offline, but the atmospheric seals are intact, Eris noted, his own breath fogging the inside of his helmet. They didn't suffocate. No signs of decompression. The oppressive silence was their constant companion as they reached their destination, the bridge. The armored door slid open to reveal a scene of absolute stillness. The command chairs were empty. The holographic displays were dark. Everything was in its place, covered by a thin layer of ice crystals from the freezing temperature. It was a tomb sealed for eons, not a warship lost a few months ago. Eris moved towards the main tactical console, his own instruments whirring. He scanned the area and his brow furrowed in confusion. "What is it, Doctor?" Elara Vance's voice crackled in his ear from the Phoenix. "The readings are impossible," Eris said, his scientific certainty beginning to fray. "There's no residual energy, no radiation, not even background quantum foam fluctuation. It's not a vacuum in here, Colonel. It's a null space. It's as if the fundamental laws of physics have been muted." A Marine beside him reached out and touched the arm of the captain's chair. He recoiled instantly. "It's hollow," he said, his voice trembling. Eris shone his high-intensity lamp on the chair. The light seemed to bend unnaturally around the spot the Marine had touched. He knelt, adjusting his visor's magnification. He saw it then. It wasn't damage. The atomic structure of the metal was simply gone. Not melted, not vaporized. It had been neatly excised from reality, leaving a perfect, invisible void in its place. His blood ran cold as the horrifying truth crashed down on him. He keyed his comms, his voice a choked whisper. "Colonel, Kael'thas was right. The crew, they weren't killed. They were unwritten, erased from existence." As the chilling words echoed back to the fleet, a new alert beeped on Eris's wrist-mounted scanner. A faint, non-Covenant energy signature, pulsing rhythmically. It was nearby, outside. "There's something else out here," he reported. The team quickly exited the tomb ship and followed the signal. Floating just a few hundred meters away, tumbling slowly in the void, was an object that belonged to no one. It was a small probe, no larger than a man, but its design defied all known principles. It was a lattice of impossible angles and surfaces that seemed to drink the light, refusing to reflect it. It felt ancient, older than the sun, older than the Covenant, older than anything he had ever imagined. And from its core, a faint rhythmic light pulsed, a lonely, silent heartbeat in the great, terrifying dark. The architect probe floated in the center of the main science lab aboard the Curiosity, suspended in a shimmering containment field. It did not spin or move, yet it felt intensely, unnervingly present. The lab was a hub of frantic, focused energy. The greatest scientific minds of both humanity and the Covenant, represented either in person or by holographic avatar, were gathered in a tense circle around the artifact. For 2 days they had tried everything: spectrometers, quantum scanners, particle bombardments. The probe remained a perfect black box, absorbing every attempt to analyze it without revealing a single secret. "It's physically inert," Dr. Eris Thorne said in exasperation, wiping a hand across his tired face. "It's like trying to scan a shadow." From a holographic projector, the image of a Covenant inquisitor named Lyra shimmered. She was an expert in xenotheology, a field humans had always dismissed. "The markings on the surface are not physical, Doctor," she corrected gently. "Our deep scans suggest they are conceptual. It speaks a language of pure mathematics, woven into its very structure." An idea sparked in Eris's mind, born from the stories he'd heard about the battle. The impossible maneuvers. The intuition. "It's not a computer," he murmured, looking at Colonel Vance's avatar. "It's a resonance chamber. We're trying to force a lock when we should be listening for the key." Following Eris's new theory, a specialized chair was wheeled into the lab. In it sat a young woman, a human communications officer, with a rare passive form of the pilot's gift. She was a resonator, able to feel and interpret the subtle harmonies of space-time. With a nervous breath, she placed her hands on a console linked to the containment field and closed her eyes, her mind reaching out not with force, but with quiet attention. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the probe responded. The rhythmic light at its core pulsed once brightly. The lab lights dimmed, and the probe projected a vast three-dimensional image that filled the entire room. It was not a recording, it was a sensory experience. They felt a psychic chill as the story of the architects began. They saw a galaxy teeming with life. In the center, a race of beings made of woven starlight. The architects moved between worlds, shaping nebulae and guiding the evolution of young species. They were gardeners on a cosmic scale. Then they saw the arrival of the silent hunger. It wasn't an invading fleet, it was a creeping void, a patch of reality where physics simply broke down, an anti-creation that spread from the galactic fringe. The holographic image showed a world touched by the hunger. Cities didn't burn, they simply ceased to be, erased from time and space, leaving behind a smooth, featureless nothing. A voice filled their minds, ancient, weary, and devoid of emotion, the final log of the architects. The hologram shifted, showing the architects in a desperate, galaxy-spanning construction project. They were building the gateway's immense structures positioned in a great, spherical cage around the galactic core. The image showed the quarantine activating. The gateways flared to life, and a wave of space-time severance washed across the galaxy. They watched in horror as hundreds of star systems, many teeming with life, were on the wrong side of the wall. They were not destroyed. They were simply left behind, cut off, abandoned to the slow, inevitable creep of the hunger. The hologram zoomed in, showing the current state of the galaxy. A network of red lights blinked along the quarantine wall. The gateways. One of them pulsed with a particularly urgent light right over Earth's solar system. The architect's voice delivered its final, chilling message. The hologram faded, plunging the lab back into its dim, clinical light. The silence that followed was absolute, filled with the weight of 1,000,000 years of forgotten history and a future that seemed to have been written in stone. It was Elara Vance who finally broke it, her voice coming through the comm, hard and clear, directed at Kael'thas's stunned avatar. "Your simulations were wrong, Arbiter," she said, her voice grim with the terrible new understanding. They weren't predicting the future. They were detecting an echo of the past. The revelation from the architect probe sent a shockwave through the Allied fleet. The truth was worse than any of them had imagined. They were not facing a judgment or a test. They were standing on the crumbling edge of a cosmic prison wall, with a monster stirring inside and an automated, merciless system preparing to amputate a limb of the galaxy to save the rest. An emergency council was convened, a tense grid of holographic faces connecting the human and Covenant command ships. The air crackled with fear and indecision. "The message is clear," a Covenant elder stated, his voice trembling. The architects themselves, beings of unimaginable power, chose to retreat. Their final instruction was to flee. "We must honor their wisdom. We must pull back and save who we can." General Thorne, for once, found himself in agreement with the aliens. "He's right, this isn't our fight. We can't stop a severance. Our duty is to protect Earth. We must fortify our system and prepare for the fallout." High Arbiter Kael'thas remained silent, his silver eyes clouded with conflict. His entire worldview had been shattered. His people were not the noble saviors he believed them to be, but the fearful jailers of a forgotten prison. It was Elara Vance who stood against the tide of fear. Her face was set, her eyes burning with a cold fire. "Flee where?" she challenged, her voice cutting through the defeatist murmurs. "The severance will cut our civilization in two. Millions of human lives in the outer colonies, billions of Covenant citizens on their border worlds, was all will be left behind, abandoned to the hunger. Is that a victory? Is that survival?" She turned her gaze on Kael'thas. The architects failed because they saw only two options: fight a monster they couldn't kill, or build a wall to hide from it. They never considered a third path. And what path is that, Colonel? General Thorne scoffed. To reason with an automated system? To fight a force of nature? No, Elara said, her voice dropping but gaining intensity. To change the function of the machine. The architects built a wall. We are going to turn it into a weapon. The quarantine system is a network of immense power. If we can understand it, if we can interface with it, we can retask it. Turn it from a passive cage into an active defense grid. A shield. A warning system. A stunned silence followed. The audacity of the proposal was breathtaking. To tamper with a machine millions of years old, built by godlike beings, was an act of supreme arrogance or supreme faith. It is impossible, the Covenant Elder whispered. The probe itself is a black box. The gateway will be infinitely more complex. The probe responded to one of our resonators, Eris Thorne interjected, his avatar stepping forward. It responded to the unique quantum signature of human consciousness. The architects were masters of physics, but we are a part of it in a way they might not have been. It's a long shot. It's the only shot. All eyes turned to Kael'thas, Oshuasas. The final decision rested on the fragile alliance he represented. He looked at the faces of his council, filled with fear. Then he looked at Elara, her expression unyielding. Not with the arrogance of a warrior, but with the fierce resolve of a protector. He saw in her the one thing the architects had lost, hope. The Covenant has lived in the shadow of this fear for millennia, Kael'thas said slowly, his voice resonating with newfound purpose. We have allowed it to dictate our actions, to turn us into reluctant executioners. No more. He straightened, the faint, holy light of his skin returning, but this time it was softer, wiser. We will not flee. We will stand with humanity. We will face the coming night together. The decision was made. The Allied fleet, a small, defiant flicker of life against the infinite dark, changed course. Their new destination was a point in the void near Neptune, a place where reality itself felt thin and ancient. Their target loomed before them on their view screens, a structure so vast it defied comprehension. It was the gateway, a perfect obsidian ring, kilometers in diameter, hanging silently in space. It absorbed all light, a hole in the fabric of the universe. In its center was a sphere of absolute blackness, a darkness that seemed to pull at their very souls. As the fleet approached, the gateway stirred from its million-year slumber. The central sphere began to ripple. The space around the ring warped. "Sir," the tactical officer on the Phoenix reported, his voice tight with awe and terror. "The gateway is activating, multiple energy signatures emerging. They don't look like ships." From the surface of the gateway, constructs of pure, shimmering energy detached themselves. They were silent, graceful, and utterly lethal. They were the quarantine's automated defense system, the antibodies of a dying god awakened to purge an infection, and the fleet was heading straight for them. The constructs of light moved with the flawless, terrifying grace of a natural law. They were not ships, they were manifestations of the quarantine's will, celestial antibodies surging to purge a foreign body. Lances of pure energy, silent and absolute, slammed against the Allied fleet's shields. The bridge of the Phoenix shuddered, alarms screaming a symphony of impending doom. "Shields at 30%, the tactical officer yelled. "They're cutting through us. Colonel, we must return fire." "Hold your fire," Elara Vance commanded, her voice a strange calm in the heart of the storm. "Ma'am?" the officer asked, his voice laced with disbelief. "That is an order, Lieutenant," Elara said, her eyes fixed on the immense black gateway. She turned to her resonator team, their faces pale but resolute in their specialized chairs. "Power down all weapon systems. Divert everything to the resonance core. Now!" It was an insane command, an act of collective suicide in the face of certain annihilation. On the bridge of the righteous fury, Kael'thas watched in horrified disbelief. Elara closed her eyes, shutting out the chaos, the alarms, the fear. She reached out with her mind, not with the focused precision of a pilot, but with the open vulnerability of a listener. She felt the gateway, and what she felt was not malice. It was a deep, resonant grief. the sorrow of a machine left alone for millions of years, tasked with an awful, unending duty. It was a song of loss and fear. "Don't fight its song," she whispered over the neural link to her team. "Acknowledge it. Then add our own harmony." From the outside, the spectacle was breathtaking. The human ships fell silent, their weapons powering down. Then a new light began to glow from them. Not the harsh glare of cannons, but a soft, intricate, silver light. It pulsed gently, then flowed outward in shimmering threads, weaving together in the void. It was not an attack. It was an offering. The defense constructs, creations of pure logic, hesitated. Their programming was simple. Identify threat, neutralize threat. But this new phenomenon did not compute. It was not hostile. It was beautiful. Their fluid, aggressive advance slowed. Their lances of energy dimmed. They seemed to listen. On the bridge of the Phoenix, Elara felt the shift. The gateway's sorrowful hum was met by their counter-melody, a harmony built not on logic but on a uniquely human frequency, hope. It was a melody that spoke of choosing compassion over fear, of finding a third way where there were only two. And the ancient machine, for the first time in a million years, listened back. The absolute blackness of the sphere at the gateway's center softened. A single point of white light appeared within it, then expanded, pushing back the void. The great obsidian ring itself began to change, its light-absorbing surface transforming into a crystalline structure that shone with its own internal luminescence. It was not an attack. It was a conversation. A torrent of pure comprehension flooded the minds of Elara and her resonators. It was not words or images, but a direct, overwhelming transfer of understanding. They felt the architect's final, desperate sorrow. They felt the machine's unending loneliness, and they felt its dawning, logical yet profound realization as it processed their harmony. There is another way. The mathematics of fear were being overwritten by the logic of hope. The energy constructs dissolved, their forms melting back into the now brilliant structure of the gateway. The storm had passed. In the aftermath, the Allied fleet floated in a silent, reverent awe. The gateway was no longer a black hole in reality. It was a radiant, crystalline structure of impossible beauty, a window that now shone with the light of a new dawn. On the bridge of the Phoenix, Elara Vance opened her eyes. Tears she hadn't realized were forming streamed down her face, born not of sorrow, but of the immense, beautiful relief of their impossible success. The alarms were silent. Her crew was staring at the transformed gateway, their faces filled with wonder. A single voice, heavy with a reverence no one had ever heard from him before, crackled over the comm. It was Caelthus. "By the first stars. Colonel, what have you done?" The light from the transformed gateway washed over the bridge of the Phoenix, bathing everything in a soft silver luminescence. The torrent of data had ceased, but the understanding it left behind was permanent, imprinted upon the minds of Elara and her resonators. The machine had offered them a choice. Its core programming remained: protect the galaxy from the silent hunger. The severance protocol was its only known method, but their harmony, their unexpected variable of hope, had introduced a new parameter. The quarantine could accept a new directive, but only if the new caretakers accepted the full weight of the architect's burden. Elara opened a channel to Caelthus, or Shwayam, her voice quiet but resonating with the power of the moment. "It's given us the keys, the full operational schematics. We can tell it what to do." Caelthus's holographic form looked toward the radiant gateway, his silver eyes filled with an awe that bordered on religious. The architects abandoned their post. It asked if we will take their place. "It's more than that," Elara corrected gently. "It's asking if we will do what they could not." They built a wall to hide. It's offering us the chance to build a shield. The choice hung in the space between their two ships, a decision that would echo for eternity. To accept was to take responsibility for a threat that had defeated gods. To refuse was to condemn the galaxy to the cold, automated, and broken solution of the past. "Our simulations never saw this future," Caelthus murmured, a profound admission of his people's limitations. "That's because the future isn't meant to be predicted," Elara replied, her gaze meeting his. "It's meant to be built." A silent understanding passed between the human colonel and the Covenant arbiter. They were no longer enemies, no longer reluctant allies. They were partners. "Relay our directive to the gateway," Elara commanded her crew. "The quarantine is over. The watch begins." The bridge of the Alliance flagship, the ANS Vigilance, was a testament to the future Elara and Kayothas had chosen to build. Its design was a seamless blend of human practicality and Covenant elegance. Humans and aliens worked side by side, their movements a practiced dance of cooperation. Fleet Admiral Elara Vance stood before the main view screen, her dark uniform now adorned with the twin symbols of the new Galactic Alliance. The lines around her eyes were deeper, etched by a decade of immense responsibility, but her gaze was as steady as ever. Beside her stood High Ambassador Kael'thas. The zealous light of his past had been replaced by a calm, wise glow. He was no longer a judge, but a diplomat and a true shepherd to his people and many others. They were not looking at a star or a planet. They were looking at the gateway. It was no longer a silent black void. It was a vibrant, shimmering ring of light, a hub of activity. Ships from dozens of species, many of whom had never met before the quarantine fell, moved in orderly patterns around it. The gateway had been transformed into the Farwatch Array, the central node of a galactic defense system that monitored the edges of reality for any sign of the Silent Hunger's return. "The Arcturian delegation has formally joined the Alliance," Kael'thas reported, his voice holding a quiet satisfaction. "They offer their expertise in crystalline data storage to reinforce the array's memory banks." "Another piece of the shield falls into place," Elara murmured. She smiled faintly. "My father would have called this an impossible gamble." "Our entire existence is an impossible gamble," Kael'thas countered softly. "The difference is now we are betting on each other." He gestured to the bustling star lanes on the screen. "The architects sought to preserve life by separating them. They created a galaxy of isolated echoes. You have taught us that the strongest echo is a chorus." Elara's gaze drifted to a small human science vessel, moving alongside a massive Covenant exploration ship, both heading towards the gateway on a joint mission. Hope, she realized, wasn't a passive feeling. It was an action. It was the daily, difficult, and beautiful work of building something together. "The hunger is still out there," she said, a statement of fact, not of fear. "Yes," Kael'thas agreed, "but now the galaxy will not face it alone, and it will not face it in silence." Elara Vance nodded, a sense of profound peace settling over her. The future was not guaranteed. The night was still long. But for the first time in millions of years, the galaxy was no longer hiding from the dark. It had lit a candle, and together they would make sure that flame would never go out. And so they lit a candle together in the cosmic dark. I hope the flame of this story has lit a spark for you as well. Just as Elara and Kael'thas built an alliance, let's continue to build our own community of story lovers. You can support this journey by leaving a like on this video to let me know you were here, and share this story so that more people can join our fleet. And most importantly, please subscribe to the channel so we don't lose each other in the adventures yet to come. Thank you for being a part of this one. I'll see you in the next story.